that I feel like if you're interested in this topic, you should be reading these books. These are important books on this subject that are really going to help kind of frame, how you can strategically network with folks to where you can help them get what they want and you can get everything you want. And it's true win-wins.
Welcome to Racking Up Rentals, a show about how regular people, those of us without huge war chests of capital or insider connections, can build lasting wealth acquiring a portfolio of buy and hold real estate. But we don't just go mainstream looking at what's on the market and asking banks for loans, nor are we posting "we buy houses" signs or just looking for, quote, motivated sellers to make lowball offers to. You see, we are people-oriented deal makers. We sit down directly with sellers to work out win-win deals without agents or any other obstacles and buy properties nobody else even knows are for sale. I'm Jeff from The Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur. If you're the kind of real estate investor who wants long-term wealth, not get-rich-quick gimmicks or pictures of yourself holding fat checks on social media, this show is for you. Join me and quietly become the wealthiest person on your block. Now let's go rack up a rental portfolio.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Racking Up Rentals. Show notes for this episode can be found at thoughtfulre.com/E120. Please do us a big favor by hitting that subscribe button in your podcast app or your follow button or whatever it says on your phone. These days, it really does help other fellow thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs who are looking for a show like this to find it. Thank you for doing that. Onward with today's episode. And in today's episode, I am really pleased to welcome back a guest. This is the first person to make 2 appearances on the Racking Up Rentals podcast, and that is my friend, Mr. Brian Trippe. Brian is a real estate investor himself and an educator, but I might think of him mostly as a connector, as someone who brings people together. So it was quite appropriate when I said something stupid on the internet recently that the conversation that came as a result of it led Brian into that conversation and prompted us to get back together in the context of a podcast interview where he could share his expertise around the topic of networking. And networking was the general topic that I was slandering online in a very sloppy, loose, and poorly crafted statement that I made. So in this conversation, which I'm really pleased to share with you, Brian really talks a lot about what good networking is, really what it's not, gives us lots of tips to be very successful, and sets me straight and hopefully helps you on the idea that this type of activity, this going out into the world, adding value and creating relationships with people is truly one of the most important things that we can be doing. So without further ado, let's cue up my interview with Mr. Brian Trippe. Brian Trippe, welcome back. You have the distinct honor of being the first repeat guest on Racking Up Rentals.
Jeff, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. I've been, ever since we connected, a few years back, just to watch your journey and, what you've done with the podcast, what you've done with your Facebook group. I love it. I think it's incredible. You are like one of the kings of networking, in my opinion.
Good segue. Good segue. I feel like I do need to just tell this quick story. The headline is Jeff said something stupid on the internet, but now look what good is coming out of it. So I kind of off the cuff the other day in my Facebook group, Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders, I just made a little short post that said, in my opinion, maybe this is an unpopular perspective, networking is overrated. So here's what happened. I hit post and I was like, oh, time to take a shower. So I jump in the shower. And I'm about like 2 minutes into the shower. And I'm like, whoa, that was bad. Like, should I get out right now? Soapy, hair and all that and delete that post. I was like, no, finish the shower, get out a couple minutes later, walk straight to the phone, grab it with wet hands. And I'm like, okay, if nobody has commented on this thing, I'm just going to delete it. It's like it never happened. But sure enough, people had already commented. There were like at least 3 posts. And when I had that realization of like, I shouldn't have said that, I swear you came to my mind. Like, I'm not saying I was thinking about you in the shower. I'm just saying that you literally came to my mind. And I was like, oh no, man, I've got friends who write books about this topic. And I just said, I don't think networking is good. So I've since, I've had a little bit of a mea culpa, and I've realized I basically just use kind of sloppy language. It was way too broad strokes to describe what I was meaning specifically. But you commented and said, let's have a conversation about this. And
let me ask you first before we kind of get going on with this. What were you trying to say? Like mea culpa, notwithstanding, what were you actually trying? Because you obviously felt something for some reason. What were you actually trying to say?
Yeah, what I was really trying to say was, I think sometimes people, and I'd say maybe people who are newer in real estate, feel like they have to collaborate on every deal. Like they feel like it's not possible for them to do something basically by themselves. So like, hey man, let's get some, who's looking for a partner? Who's looking for a joint venture? And sometimes, in other Facebook groups, I will see people post things like, hey man, looking to JV, who's up for a partner? And I'm just thinking, dude, these are strangers on the internet. And to me, that's the biggest red flag that says I have no idea what I'm doing, because I would never approach something that way. So I was kind of having this real narrow definition of like, first, try to see if you can find ways to get your deals done yourself. I mean, obviously you've got team members and stuff like that, but stop trying to give away half the dang pie when you've never really given it a shot to do it all yourself. That's what was on my mind.
But that's not networking.
And that's exactly is the problem. I use that word, which is way too broad to describe that one sentiment.
Yeah, that's fear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of things. That's inexperience, as you mentioned. Yeah. But yeah, I think that it's, I'm glad you did though, because I think that networking, and I just said this to you before you hit record, I think that networking is that word, even it's become a phrase, that idiom it's got a certain, maybe not negative, it's got a certain connotation associated with it. Our minds, each individually, our minds go to a very specific place when you hear that word. And it's probably different for everybody, but it does go to a very specific place. And I would suggest to you, Jeff, and for anyone who's listening to this, that for most people, through my experience, their mind goes to a place that's not what the word is. And I wonder if there's like a way that we can come up with a new word, come up with a new way to say networking, and say, hey, do you want to network? It just sounds sleazy to use but I don't know. It doesn't sound right.
Yeah. As I was debriefing my own thoughts on my little misstep on the internet, I was like, really networking is this huge umbrella that there's all these things that sub bullets or whatever that kind of comprise it. I feel like those sub bullets individually are really, really valuable. I mean, I'd never say to somebody, you should definitely not try to find new, professionals who might help you remodel your properties or fund your transaction. I mean, obviously those types of things are good, but I was just picturing the like sort of, just back in the old days when we could go see people face to face, like standing in a room with a beer and the speaker is going to talk in like 30 minutes. You're like, cool. How's it going? Nice to meet you. Just the sort of awkward, like, oh geez, what are we really doing here kind of thing.
It's funny you say that. We just had one of those meetings last night where we had an open bar and people are standing there with a beer. And, I've taken it upon myself to cultivate community really and truly out of the phrase or the word networking. How can we build a community of go-givers? How can we build a community of collaborating? Not to say that we should all be collaborating with everybody at all times, but there are multiple instances where I have a business, you have a business, and there's something that we can do here. And it makes logical sense. Let's talk and see if what that might look like, versus I have a business, you have a business, and I want to crush you. It doesn't have to be that way. And when I got into real estate, I couldn't find people outside of that mentality of like, I want to go crush you. Mm-hmm. And that's why I started a meetup group in Birmingham, Alabama, is because what I was looking for, I didn't fit in. I was looking for something else. I was looking for an inclusive environment where you would want to help me, versus either leading me astray or just giving me some basic generalities that aren't going to help me at all. Let's actually try to help people and figure this thing out so that they can go either do on their own or partner up with some folks and let's go get some actual deals done.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that expression that your net work is your net worth. And that does resonate strongly with me. What do you think, and what is your sort of definition of that when you hear that?
Why does that resonate with you?
That's a good question. I do feel like if you are trying to exist in a vacuum, then things are going to be a lot harder. And it is very valuable to, whenever a problem comes up, know maybe the top 3 people you might call to either directly solve that problem or brainstorm a solution, or who could shed light on it. And so I do think that kind of stuff is valuable. I think also tying into this is to use like another sort of idiom, but you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that part also really resonates with me. And I do think that sort of quote networking leads to surrounding yourself with people who inspire and challenge you. And I think that's like dynamite,
Jeff, you're describing all really good things here. Yeah.
So I do love networking.
but why? So why you're describing everything that like networking is supposed to be? That's the way it's supposed to look like. But there's this negative connotation associated with it. I'll tell you this quick story. A coaching student, this is many years ago, I said to her something like, "Hey, are you coming to our meeting tonight?" I've been hosting meetings here in Birmingham since 2016. "Hey, are you coming to our meeting tonight?" She's like, "Yeah, probably, but I really just don't like to network." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" I was curious what she meant. She said, "I don't like asking people for things." That was her definition based on her experiences of what networking is. Another very well-known real estate investor, I was on his podcast probably a year or so ago, and he said something that's called network, not net sit. When you go to a meeting, you should be working and work in the room. And some people think that, some people feel that way. And again, everybody has kind of their own, something comes to mind. And usually based on my experience, it's something a little bit negative when they think of the word networking. Or so when we talk about networking, or it's boring, I don't want to talk about this at all. But when you start talking about some of the stuff that you just said, Jeff, your network is your net worth. We hear that phrase almost so many times that it's like, your spouse, you say, "I love you" to your spouse, you just do it subconsciously. Are you really feeling it in that moment? Do we really truly know what that phrase means? Your network is your net worth. How can it actually equal? Is an equal sign, right? Is an equal sign. Your network, it is your net worth. So how can we put that into practice? What are some practical, applicationable type of things that we can do to let us associate money, actual like monetization of our network, without taking advantage of people, without making it seem like I'm only in it for me selfishly? So I'll just say a couple of things based on that point. I'm going to name drop some books that I feel like if you're interested in this topic, you should be reading these books. These are important books on this subject that are really going to help kind of frame, how you can strategically network with folks to where you can help them get what they want and you can get everything you want. And it's true win-wins. So Adam Grant wrote a book called Give and Take. And the most interesting thing about this book, Give and Take, he talks about there's givers out there and there's takers out there. And there's some people that might do a little bit of both. But the most interesting thing that I found in that book is the people, you would think this just because I'm talking about it, the givers are the ones that are the most successful people, not the takers, right? You would think that. But how do we actually do that? Because if you're constantly giving and you're not receiving anything, but the interesting thing about the book is there's a study done that proved that people who give are the most financially successful, and the people who give, the givers, are also the most financially unsuccessful. Both. The poorest and the richest are both givers. And do you know what differentiates the two?
No, but I'm fascinated by this.
This is a study. The book is full of just studies. The difference is patience and time and doing it with the right intentions. Mm-hmm. It's really time is what he said. Time, patience. If you're a giver and you do it over time, and he ends up, defining success by a lot of different ways. We can all define success by a lot of different ways. But that is a fascinating thing to think about. I remember I spoke in Arizona one time a couple of years ago, and your mentor, our mutual friend, Greg Pinio, was in the audience. Yeah. And I said this, and I was talking about this topic, and a lady at the end, I was doing Q&A, she raised her hand and she was sobbing. And she's like, I feel like I've been a giver and I don't have anything to show for it. And I'm like losing money because I'm getting walked all over because I am such a giver. And I said this to her, how long have you been doing this? She's like, I've been in real estate for probably like 4 or 5 months. Like the big differentiator, and I've seen this in my own life, Jeff, I've seen this in my own real estate business. The difference is time. Yeah. Do this over time, your consistent actions over time to be a consistent giver. And this, I think what it really, in my opinion, I think what it really is saying here is if you only do it for a short period of time, you're probably doing it for selfish reasons. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you're doing it for a long period of time, it's probably who you are. Yeah. So that's a great book, Adam Grant, Give and Take. It's really just a whole bunch of studies done, and he just comments on them. Yeah, interesting. That's very cool. A word that I just wrote down on my paper right before you told us about that book, but then you kind of brought this word up yourself a little bit is intention, or I wrote down intentionality. Oh, I'm getting to that, Jeff. You just got me warmed up. Okay, awesome. Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, if I'm thinking about walking into that room, at a meetup or something, if I have no clue really why I'm there, what I can contribute to somebody else, or what I'm maybe wanting to find there myself, it just feels really lame and pointless. Like I'm just kind of logging hours. But if I did show up and say, you know what, I'm looking for, I'm looking for the best plumber in my city because I need to strengthen that member of my team. Or I'm looking for somebody who I'd love to mentor, and I want to see a spark in their eye to see that they're serious. Whatever it is, then you have like a lens. You've got a scope. You've got a sight that you're looking through, and you're like, I'm looking for this particular thing, rather than just sort of wandering around aimlessly, which is kind of how I end up feeling sometimes. So, Jeff, do you want the steps? Here are the steps. Let's do it, man. I got my notes out. Process. Here's the process. This is how you network. This is the process. It's in a book I've got coming out here in just a couple months called The ROI of Life. How you can how you can build relationships that will cash flow for a lifetime. That's my book that's coming out here in just a couple months. Awesome. Here are the steps, Jeff, to networking. Number one is you have to have a vision. You have to know what you want. You can't just be, you just mentioned this, aimlessly saying to people, I get this. I think you said this. I get this all the time. I don't even understand people's thought processes when they say this to me, but they're just like, hey, I just wanted to network with you. What does that mean? What do you have there's no intentionality to that whatsoever. What can I do for you? Well, I don't know. Well, I get a gag reflex when people say stuff like that. Like, hey, bro, do you want to jump on a call? We can network. I'm like, that's the last thing in the world I want to do. No. It's a terrible opener. Terrible opener. And I made this Facebook post many years ago. I have a networking group, a real estate networking Facebook group. And I made this post a couple of years ago about here are the top 5 things that you say to someone in a DM to get their attention. You don't say, here's what you don't say. You don't say, hey, bro, let's jump on a call to network. It doesn't get anybody's attention, and it gets you probably blocked. But here are the steps to networking. Let's do this first. I got to have a vision, okay? I have to understand. I either have a business or I'm starting a business, I'm interested in real estate. There's something going on in my life where I'm starting something, I'm building something, growing something. I have a vision. Okay. Number two, I have to identify within that vision, what do I need? What do I need to get me to the next level? What is in my way right now? What are my challenges? What is blocking me from getting to that next step? And then I love the book. The book's pretty simple, but I'll just say it in a phrase. Once you've identified the what, you now need to, don't identify the how. You don't need to identify the how. You need to identify next the who. Mm-hmm. Who, not how.
Right.
Who can get me over that barrier? Who can help me? And so once you've identified, and this is an exercise we do, write down 5 people that you think can help you. I don't care if you know them or not. Write down 5 people that you think can help you. And if it's someone that you don't know, then you need to try to figure out who you know that knows that person. I mean, this is literally just yesterday where I called a great friend of mine and he said, you know who could help you? This person could help you. And I'm like, I know the name. I don't know who that is. Can you connect me? Mm-hmm. So if you answer the question, who, not how, and it happens to be someone that's not in your network, figure out who does know that person and then ask them. This is so important, Jeff. Ask them to make a warm introduction for you. Don't just give me their phone number. If someone ever does this, and they do this a lot, hey, here's their number, call them. Yeah. I say, man, thank you so much for giving me that number. Do you mind either hopping on a 3-way call with us or doing like a text thread with us or an email thread with us and give me a warm introduction? Or better, if you're at a live event, I do this because I'm so busy. I'm the organizer and I say, hey, you should go talk to so-and-so. And if I'm not super busy, I'll walk them over and I'll say, hey, this is so-and-so and meet him. He's looking for this. I know you do a lot of this. Do you think you might be able to help them? Mm-hmm. So that's a warm introduction. And what the reason a warm introduction is important is because obviously if say I'm the person making the introduction, Jeff, I already know this person and I know them well. And you have instant credibility now because you're getting introduced by someone who already knows them really well. So it's instant. It's a credibility marker. Oh, you know, so-and-so. I'm automatically going to help you. And now you start talking about, going back to Robert Cialdini with Influence, which is a super important book that most everybody should be reading that book. Just if you're in sales, if you got up this morning, you took a shower, you're in sales. So congratulations, you need to read that book, okay? Because you're presenting yourself, okay? So you're in sales. Robert Cialdini has some incredible experiments. He cites some experiments and some studies. And there's so much stuff, so much golden stuff in that book. And one of my favorite things in that book is the law of reciprocity. Mm-hmm. And the law of reciprocity is an unbelievable law. And it's unbelievable because it doesn't work one for one. So reciprocity, real quick, is I do something for you, you're going to want to do something back for me. That's basically what reciprocity is. If you have ever gone to a restaurant and you know how there's usually like a set of doors and sometimes there's another set of doors, you open a door open for somebody. What does that next person do for you? Mm-hmm. They almost always open the next door for you. Why do they do that? There are studies done on that one phenomenon. Why did they do that, Jeff?
Yeah, they're returning the favor.
But why? What's going on inside of them that makes them do that?
Yeah, they feel like this little tiny sense of indebtedness. They want guilt. Yeah.
It's guilt. Reciprocity can be led back to one word, and it's guilt. And again, so many studies have been done on this, and this is what's fascinating about reciprocity. Jeff, if I do something for you, or let's just say you do something for me, I'm going to feel so indebted. I'm going to have that feeling of like, oh man, it's going to be so strong within most people. It's going to be so strong that I'm not going to pay you back one for one. You did this for me. I'm going to do something back in return for you. Studies have shown that it's between 2 and 3 times greater what I repay you.
Wow.
So you start adding all the stuff up that we just got done talking about. Give and take. I'm a giver. And if you're not a giver, by the way, you need to practice giving. Don't just do it for selfish reasons. Practice giving so that it becomes just innate. And you just do it. Become a giver. You're going to give and you're going to give and you're going to give. And what happens automatically over time is you start getting repaid 2 times and 3 times what you gave.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man. I love that.
That's networking, Jeff. That is networking.
I told you I love networking, Brian. Geez, come on. No, that is great. It feels so good. And as you were kind of talking about the warm introduction, in that case, it's great to be the one who's being warmly introduced. And it's also great to be the one who's making the warm introduction. Like that's kind of like this, there's a whole lot of goodness going on there. Like everybody's benefiting, but everybody's also it's just good to be either role, I guess.
So Jeff, let's start equating money to our network. Let's complete the equal sign. Let's say I put a deal together. Okay. Let's say I'm not involved in the deal, but I know this guy has the money and this guy has the deal, right? I'm going to put those 2 pieces together. Some people want to partake and some people want a cut of it. I don't typically I did that a little bit. I don't really like doing that. I'm connecting. I'm a connector. I connect people. What ends up happening is now when you connect people with again, and this networking, I forgot to add this part to it. You cannot have expectations of return, by the way. It does end up happening over time.
Yeah.
But when you start to expect it, there's resentment. There's a lot of negative feelings that are going to go on inside of you, and it's going to negate the whole process. So you have to do this goodwill without the expectation of receiving. But here's what's going to happen, Jeff. It's this unbelievable, again, reciprocity, reciprocating type of phenomenon that's going on. Say I connected these 2 people and they did a deal. Guess who both of those people are going to come to the next time they have a deal?
Yeah, you, absolutely.
Guess who they're coming to?
Yeah.
I did, and I would tell you, I'm be the first person to admit in the year 2020, in 2020, I would tell you I didn't even work. I didn't work in 2020. I didn't work at all. At the same time, on the other side of my mouth, I'll sit here and tell you I did 6 figures wholesaling in 2020 by people bringing me deals that I didn't have time for. And I sent some text messages and I got referral fees. I'm not even trying to do it. And I made 6 figures in referral fees just by connecting stuff. And I didn't want anything. It just ended up that people, hey, I want to pay you this. I want to give you this.
Yeah.
And that is the power of networking. That's the power of, and I just happen to have this next to me because of a previous podcast, but a book I wrote a couple of years ago called Nothing's for Sale, and how to become the local real estate authority, how to become the local authority in your local market.
Yeah. How
do you become the local authority? By having a meetup group, by having a local podcast, by doing all these strategic things. But what it does, Jeff, is it gives you this almost celebrity status, not by, you have a podcast and you obviously, Jeff, you've done a lot of real estate and you have a lot of knowledge. I don't have anywhere near the knowledge you have when it comes to real estate, but I host a podcast and people see me as an authority figure because I'm associated with other authority figures. I'm sure you've had people on your podcast that you've interviewed who are doing way bigger and better things than you are, but you are seen as a real estate authority. You're seen on their level.
Right.
Just because of the association. And again, all this stuff comes back to authority, celebrity, doing goodwill, being a giver, putting all this out into the universe. And you end up being the source for a lot of the deals that come through that town, that city, that market area. You end up being the source for, if you do coaching, your coaching students come through that stuff. And it ends up being just like this endless cycle of deals. And that's how we actually put a definition, or how we define that little equal sign, that your network, now it really and truly becomes your net worth.
Yeah. Wow. I'm really enjoying this. I'm feeling increasingly stupid about my original post, but this is awesome. And I had no idea you were writing the ROI of Life. I thought that most of your thoughts here today would be pulling from kind of the ideas of Nothing's for Sale. So I was just curious, are these does the ROI of Life like pick up where Nothing's for Sale left off? Are they related? Are they sequels, or what's the connection there?
Yeah, Nothing's for Sale is more about like how to become the authority figure in your local market.
Yeah.
The ROI of Life is really kind of maybe digs a little bit deeper, and it's not just putting out content and just starting a podcast and having a meetup. It's really a book about relationships is what it comes down to.
I see.
And how to be, I mean, I pull from the 5 love languages. I think that's a really important sales book.
Yeah.
I pull from, oh my gosh, Jeff, there's a book that nobody talks about because it's not a business book. It's a relationship book. So nobody in our industry is talking about it, but it really puts the 5 love languages on steroids. It's a book called How We Love. And I'm telling you, if you want to be better at sales, you want to be better at relationships, because sales is relationships. You've got to start reading relationship books and not typical business books and sales books. So you want to be better at your marriage. You want to be better with your kids. You want to be better just in relationships in general. These are books because, listen, people do business with people that they like. I took the know, like, and trust thing, and that's fine. It comes down to like. They need to like you. People, and it's a proven fact, they will pay more for your service because they like you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And this can, this obviously translates to they're gonna accept your lower offer over someone else's higher offer just because they like you. You've told the story about that building, that the story that you were on my podcast talking about that, where it was just over time, building. We call it rapport, but it was you're just building a relationship. Yeah. And you end up getting this deal. And so like it happens over and over and over. I've had people tell me, if you spend less than an hour at that appointment, then you didn't build enough rapport. You're not going to get the deal. So, there's a lot to be said about that because it comes back to relationships. People want to know that they're heard. They want to know that they're liked, and we all have these deep desires to want to be needed and loved and all these things. And when you start really pulling that stuff out, it really is sales, but it has to come from a genuine place too.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question that just kind of came to my mind that I'm not even sure how eloquent this question is, but I was like fast forwarding to hearing other people's, pushback, maybe you'd say, on, even if they're feeling better about networking, they might say, yeah, but I'm an introvert. And I think probably a lot of the people listening to me feel like they're more, probably a little bit more on the introvert side. So where do those two ideas intersect? I have a couple of thoughts based on what you just said, but I want to hear what you think about it.
Introverts are more empathetic, which means they're automatically kind of naturally better with people. And just because something happens one-on-one, I would encourage you, if you are an introvert, I would go deep with 1 or 2 people. If you're at like a big networking event, you don't know anybody. A great question to ask. You need to be there with intention, first and foremost. We know that. And this is how, and Keith Ferrazzi said this in Never Eat Alone, which is the yellow book, and it's not up. Oh, it's down here. Keith, here I have I'm writing this book, so I can literally go to like 10 books right now. I can show you every one of these. I'm writing my book and pulling from some of these. Keith Ferrazzi said in Never Eat Alone, there's some great things that you can do. You're an introvert, go straight to the organizer. Like, say I'm putting on an event, Jeff, you're putting on an event, and I know I have this one need. I'm going to go straight to you. Hey, Jeff, I'm Brian. Good to meet you. I'm looking for this one particular thing. Could you connect me with, do you know anyone who? Ask for, when you present, don't ever ask somebody like if they are the one to do it. Hey, would you lend me money? You never frame it like that. You always frame it like, do you know anyone who? You're almost like asking for advice. So you go straight to the organizer and I'm looking for this one specific thing. Can you point someone out, or can you make a warm introduction to 1 or 2 people that fit what it is I'm looking for? And when they do that, go deep with that one person. you're typically going to be more empathetic. You're typically going to be asking more of the questions like, hey, I want to get to know you type of questions, or they're going to be asking that of you. So I would just make it one-on-one. Introverts are better one-on-one. Make it one-on-one and make it go deeper.
Yeah. Great tips. Great tips. Yeah. I think about myself, like I'm picturing myself in that type of situation, and all of those things they do feel very comfortable and natural. And yeah, I think, introverts, it's not that they never want to talk to people. They just,
right.
They don't want to go a mile wide and an inch deep. They want to go like a mile deep. Right. And
exactly.
So fewer people, more depth conversations, and some intentionality, I think, is awesome.
And the in-depth conversation is what leads to business, because that leads to the trust, the like, and the trust and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and who was it? It was Carnegie. I'm telling you, I got them all right here. It was Carnegie who said, here are the ways. It literally, there's a whole chapter on how to be likable.
Yeah.
Like we can't, I'm sure there's some naturally likable people out there, but for some of us, we may not be so likable. Smile. That's one of the things that Carnegie said about how to be likable. Just smile.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see when you're like looking at people's like profiles and profile pictures on Facebook or whatever, Instagram, or even Instagram photos. We're naturally drawn to the photos where people are smiling versus like a kind of a stoic or a harder look.
Yeah.
Smile. Remember people's names. Jeff, this is like 1930s Dale Carnegie stuff that is so applicable today. Just remember somebody's name. Smile, remember somebody's name, and you've won 90% of the battle.
Yeah.
Listen. Do more listening than talking. Be empathetic. Like, these are just like 101 relationship building types of skills that if you don't do these things naturally, which I kind of don't. I mean, I know you're interviewing me, but I've dominated this entire conversation. So I feel like I have to think about these things.
Oh, that's great. I love that. That actually just yesterday, I had been kicking around an idea, and I made a post, and I put the cover of that photo or the cover of that book as an image in a post. And I said, I've been thinking about doing like a point by point takedown of how to win friends and influence people.
Oh yeah. I saw that.
Correlating. Yeah. Like with, let me break down each one and say, this is how we use this principle to be thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs. And so far it's gotten a good reaction. And to me, it seems like it's really kind of the perfect, and in some ways, maybe even the most obvious, but like that is just the foundation upon which we base everything else we're doing, those principles of human relations and
everything.
Yeah.
That's what sales books should be. Some of them do mention a lot of that, but that's what sales books should be.
Yeah.
Relationship books.
Yeah.
The Go Giver is a good one. I have it on audio. I don't have this is a great one. Michael Mayer, 7 Levels of Communication. I'm just naming some great, just in case your audience are readers. I'm a reader.
Mm-hmm.
I love John Maxwell. Anything by John Maxwell is incredible, but like everyone communicates, few connect.
Oh yeah.
Awesome book. I mentioned How We Love earlier. This is phenomenal. It's probably my favorite book over the past like 2 or 3 years. Henry Cloud, The Power of the Other, like other people, another relationship book. And then here's the book I mentioned earlier, Adam Grant, Give and Take. And then this is probably the Bible when it comes to networking, and it's Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone. This is probably the single best networking book that's out there that I would recommend over anything else. Strategic networking.
Yeah.
I love it. A lot of strategy.
That's awesome. I have seen that on the shelves a million times, and I never picked it up. So that's good to know that you would rate that one so highly.
Oh, and here's the thing. This is the expanded version. It's like 400 and something pages. Because he wrote this a while ago. He expanded it to and wrote like a whole new section on social media and how to be thoughtful and how to be strategic when it comes to social media. Cannot recommend that book enough, for sure.
Oh man, that's great.
And hopefully ROI of Life. Well, hopefully that one will stack up.
It'll be in the top 10. So when is that book going to be out?
We're shooting for the end of October. We're about 2 months away. Yeah.
Awesome, man. I'm excited for that one, and can't wait to help get that into some more people's hands as well. And I was just thinking about, hey, this awesome conversation started with a half-baked and sloppy post I made that seemed like a big turd bomb for about 20 minutes. And then I was like, no. And then you commented, and the next thing you know, we've got this conversation scheduled, and that's awesome. So look how great
it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Just as you planned, Jeff.
I was totally giving to you with the anticipation of taking from this conversation. So no, I'm just kidding. If only it had been that premeditated, but anyway, thanks for this excellent conversation. So when people want to learn more about you, they know what book to look out for soon, but what's the best way to reach you, follow everything that you're up to?
Yeah, right now, Instagram, Facebook is fine. You just look me up, Brian Trippe, Brian J. Trippe on Instagram. You'll find me. I'm out there. Again, this comes straight from Keith Ferrazzi, what I'm about to say in Never Eat Alone. But I've made this a personal rule. If it takes me less than a couple minutes to do it, and you have a true need, you have a connection that you need, you've asked the question, who, not how. And I've always prided myself on the fact that I probably don't have all the answers, but I probably do know someone who does know the answer. Yeah. So if you need a connection, you need contracts, whatever you need, I'm sure Jeff shares a lot of that too. If it takes me less than a minute or two to do it, I answer every one of them and make sure that we make sure that you're connected to the community. So yeah, that's the best way to reach out to me. Thanks, Jeff.
Wonderful. Very, very generous. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Great to have you back on the show.
Awesome. Honored as always, Jeff.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope you took a bunch of notes. I think we all know that you have about 6 months worth of reading to do now with all those amazing book recommendations, and I do too. So that wraps up another episode of Racking Up Rentals. So again, show notes for this one, including a full transcript of this interview, can be found at thoughtfulre.com/E120. Please do us a big favor by hitting that subscribe button in the podcast app you're using, and take a moment to rate and review the show. Did you know that we have a Facebook group for thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs as well? It's called Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders. We'd love to have you join us over there. Just go to group.thoughtfulre.com, and the magic of the internet will take you right there. If you like this episode, and I sure hope you did, please take a screenshot of the episode, post that to Instagram, and tag us. We are at Thoughtful Real Estate. So I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, this is Jeff from the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur signing off.
Thanks for listening to Racking Up Rentals, where we build long-term wealth by being win-win deal makers. Remember, solve the person to unlock the deal and solve the financing to unlock the profits.